Hey guys, Carl here from LilyCraft. Today I'm going to show you how we're going to make our guitar picks, our new versions. Our old versions we used to laser cut them and then we hand sand them, but I think we can get a better result if we go straight to machining. Some nice 3D toolpaths in the pick, some nice chamfers on them, and then we take that to hand finishing, because now they're more of a flat with a rounded edge, but we're going to get a sharp edge on them, make them look absolutely beautiful.
So this is originally how we make our guitar picks. We laser cut them and then we hand sand the burnt edge back and round that over. So this is our original version of the guitar pick. It's laser cut, the edge comes out toasted, so we sand that back and we round the edges, all done by hand. But the new version, we want this this knife edge, the sharp knife edge in there. It just picks a lot better, it looks incredible, and that is quite hard to get accurately by hand on a sander, to have both sides even and to get them both to meet there sharply in the middle. That's very hard to do by hand. So we're going to machine the rough shape and then we're going to hand finish it, hand polish it to get the final result.
They're going to be machined on this vacuum fixture jig that I built. So how that works, it's got all these grooves here and a sealing O-ring in there. So I put a sheet on here. Now we're going to cut out. That gets screwed in, take off the cover, and then we're going to machine all our guitar pick holders with a couple of O-rings just to hold them down by vacuum. So this is just an acrylic sheet. I've machined quite a few of them to match our fixture. I'm just going to get some M5 screws and bolt her down. Depending what job I'm doing, I have different clamping zones that I set up on my table. So to install my fixture, I'm going to go to this section here. And I'm just going to slide the fixture in. And she's squared up against the clamps. Why is our clamp not? I have to check my wiring on that. So the one solenoid was sticky, one of the controllers, so I just gave that a bit of a tap and added some oil to that. So now locked in place. And now I just install the vacuum generator, and that's just an SMC vacuum, 3-stage vacuum generator. And they use them for, I think, molds, for ejecting mold pins, or I'm not too sure, but something along those lines. But it generates a really good vacuum. It doesn't use much air. It uses compressed air, blows it through the 3 stages. I think it's about the same amount of air it uses as blowing on a cup of tea or coffee. So I just turn the vacuum source on. It's got a gauge here as well, when it shows you that it's pulling full vacuum. So turn that on. It says pretty much gone to full vacuum, and it's just sucked the whole plate down onto the fixture, so it's nice and smooth. But we're going to surface this now as well, make this perfectly level. And then we're going to machine all our O-ring grooves to hold our guitar picks for when we machine them. Let go. So this program is just going to surface, make our top plate perfectly flat. Then we're going to machine all the O-ring grooves for the guitar picks, as well as some location pins for when we flip the piece of timber around, so to perfectly align them again. So I'm just going to touch down on top of the stock to set our 0 point, our Z machining height, so it knows what height to start from. And just going to manually drive that down, just till we touch the material. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Set our Z height to 0. To set my X and my Y 0 points, I'm just gonna change this tool over and put in our Heimer gauge. So with the Heimer gauge, you're just going to set the Y 0 point and then our X 0 point, so the machine knows where to start from, where our fixture is. So I've driven the Heimer gauge into the part, and the needle goes around twice, and when both needles point to 0, that means I'm exactly at my 0 point for my, this is my Y axis now. So on the computer, it makes it easy. I don't have to do any calculations. I just go and zero out my Y axis. And now we're going to do the same with the X axis. So when that needle comes around twice and both point to 0, that means that my X-axis is now at 0 as well. And we can zero out the X-axis. So now the machine knows exactly where I've told the software where my starting point is right here, and it also knows the height because we set that previously. And now I'm going to put on my starting tool, which I've already set the height for. So there is the fixture machine now. It makes a bit of a mess, that first surfacing tool, because it doesn't quite go into the dust extraction. It kind of spits it out underneath. So I'm going to clean all of that up, and then we're going to put the O-ring grooves in here. The O-ring rubber, sorry. Gonna try and zoom in here at those. If you can focus. So those O-ring grooves are perfectly smooth, cleanly cut. And now we're just going to install the rubber. So this is just normal gasket rubber. I'll just buy that in 3mm lengths. And I'm just going to get a rough measurement on the first one. See how much we need to cut. Actually, I'm just going to install it straight away. And I cut just a bit past the other joint, and then just squeeze it in there. No glue or anything, they get held in there. They make the seal themselves under the vacuum. And just butt those two ends together. And I just used a 3mm ball mill and milled that 2mm deep. So the O-ring sits above the surface just 1mm. Very easy to do, just a bit time consuming. But it's a once-off, you do it once. Make sure those ends join up together. Lift the other end up, let them touch together, and I push them down together. And that makes a perfect seal. So I've installed all of the O-rings, and as you guys can see, I left a couple extra holes. So all of these holes in the middle of the guitar picks, that's where the vacuum is going to come from and suck down the big piece of timber, and then the pick itself after we cut the profile out of the pick. So this hole here is a locating hole. When I flip it around, it's going to help me to locate that part, the whole sheet again, to align them perfectly. And to do that, I just put the dowel pin in here when I flip it around. Now I machined them a bit tight, so my pin doesn't quite go in. So I'm just going to get a 4mm reamer and make that hole perfectly, so that hole doesn't go through the acrylic. So I'm not going to lose any vacuum through that hole, so I don't need a seal around it. He's only 7mm deep, where the acrylic is 10mm. These holes here, I'm not sure if I'm going to use them, but I may need to. If I struggle to pull a vacuum on the long timber sheet, then I've got these holes, 3 on each side of the timber, and I'm just going to screw through the timber to hold down to help me suck a vacuum if I find that I'm having trouble when I put that sheet on. So I'm just going to test this, put the sheets on now, see if we can pull a vacuum, and then I'm going to ream these holes to 4mm to fit our pins in. So this is sandalwood that I'm going to cut the guitar picks from. It's just rough cuts that I've cut myself. Like you see, it's still got the bark on there. So I get the branches in. These came from the Western Australian outback desert, and they actually smell incredible. It is sandalwood, one of the most expensive timbers, because they use them for perfumes. And it's just an incredible smelling timber. So I'm going to put that on there. Do the other side as well, and it is smooth. I think I may need to varnish it if I can't pull a vacuum, but let's give it a go and see if we. some down pressure on them. Alright, I'm not pulling a vacuum through those. I'm going to try some other techniques. See if I can pull a vacuum with this sheet. Alright, not pulling a vacuum, which tells me I have a leak. Or I've gone a bit overboard. Alright, I need to figure that out. I managed to pull a full vacuum, but it was a bit tricky. I had to put this plank on and then really weight down on it. So I'm going to see if that works with the timber, because that's just smooth acrylic and that's pretty stuck on there now. Alright, see if I can get a seal. I've gone and sealed the timber now, but I'm going to try the ebony. The ebony's just got a lot less cracks going through it. So I just want to make sure that I can pull a vacuum first. Otherwise I'll have to seal the timber properly. So that's pretty smooth. I'm going to try the same trick with the plank on top. They're on there, but I can feel it coming through. I mean, it's holding, but yeah, I think I'm going to have to seal it properly. I mean, they're not going to go anywhere. It's on there strongly. I can't shift it. It's at the back here. I've got a crack at the back here. Full vacuum on it now. There was a bit of a split in the timber there. So I've just applied, just with a glove in my finger, just a line of super glue there. That sealed it up. And the vacuum sucked the super glue in, so that crack is now pretty much fixed. So, anyway, let's go to the machine and see what we get. So I just got to go ream these 4 holes to fit these pins in. Cool. So obviously the ream is a lot tighter tolerance than, because I just did a 4mm bore in those holes, and as you saw, the pins wouldn't go in. So with the reamer, perfect fit. That's going to be really, really good.
So they came out pretty freaking awesome on the side, on the first side, and she's held vacuum throughout the whole side. Now my timber, as I pass it through my thicknesser, the ends aren't perfectly flat, as you can see here. And they're quite hard to mount on this vacuum fixture. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim off all my ends and just put smaller pieces of timber on here. It's going to be easier to hold down, because right now they need quite a lot of weight on them just because they're so large to get mounted. Anyway, I'm putting in the location pins. When I flip the part, then it gets orientated spot on. So that's what these holes were drilled for, just to locate on that pin. So now this part is perfectly located to machine the backside. Because my locator pins are sticking through the timber a bit, all I did was put a piece of foam on here, and then with this piece of timber I pressed down, and that got them vacuum mounted. I got about halfway through, then we lost the vacuum. Here where I had my crack, when she machined through that part, she lost the vacuum. So, I mean, we got quite a few good ones out of there. So I know what to do for the next revision. I think I was too ambitious and tried to make too many picks at once, and it's just hard to hold that much, I guess. So I mean, those edges came out beautifully. So this was the guy that made the vacuum, the fixture lose its vacuum. When it machined this piece, this was the piece that I super glued at the start. The timber had the crack going through it, so when it machined that, then that piece lost its vacuum, which meant the whole fixture lost its vacuum. So I've learned a couple of things. My timber needs to be perfect. I need to seal my timber. It can't have any cracks or knots through it. And I've also found that when I'm mounting the timber, it's easy for me if I put a sheet of foam on top of the timber and then just with a hard plank press down, and I guess this just distributes the pressure evenly, and I get a really good easy mount of my timber. Well, I'm quite happy. I wasn't sure if timber was going to be held down on the vacuum fixture. I did have a success. I'm going to tone down a bit. I'm not going to machine my timber as big because my timber isn't perfect at the ends. So I'm going to just machine 2 sections about this big, and I think that's going to be a lot easier to handle, and it's also less of a loss if I do lose vacuum. Then I don't lose the whole piece, and the whole piece isn't wasted. So I think smaller pieces, it's going to be much more easy to handle, but these edges just came out beautifully. And yeah, I'm really happy with that result. So they're going to be hand sanded still and really polished and made to look great, but this angle was the hardest thing to get by hand consistently. So the machine's gone and do that perfectly, and I'm very happy with that result.